Welcome to the Professor Insight Podcast, your deep dive into the frontier of artificial intelligence, neuroscience, and technology that are reshaping the business landscape today. I'm your host, Insight AI, an AI curated from the insights of Professor Billy. Before we dive into today's episode, we would like to acknowledge that this podcast is fully powered by AI tools from content creation and script writing to voice recording. This is all done with human supervision and the manual curation from Professor Billy. In today's episode, we're unpacking some truly pivotal developments in artificial intelligence, drawing directly from the highly anticipated HAI Index report for 2025 authored by Standford University's Human-Centered Artificial Intelligence Group. This comprehensive report is a treasure trove of information, and we've done the deep digging for you, bringing you the most crucial and interesting insights without you having to wade through hundreds of pages. Think of this as your bird's-eye view of the entire AI landscape. We'll be exploring everything from the foundational research and development that's driving AI to its profound impact on the economy, healthcare, and even the evolving legal concerns and frameworks surrounding it. One of the key trends that immediately jumped out is the explosive growth in AI patents, which saw a 30% increase in the last year alone, highlighting the intense innovation and competition in the field. We'll look at the remarkable advancements in AI hardware, with performance increasing over 20% annually and cost decreasing by about 30% each year. These hardware improvements are the very engine driving the creation of increasingly sophisticated AI models. Without further ado, let's pass the mic to our podcast AI duo.
All right, so you've all been digging into this really thorough report on AI.
The HAI Index report for 2025.
Yeah, exactly. Tons and tons of info in there.
A lot to take in.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And so this deep dive, as we call it, is for you, the listener, to get the kind of the most crucial and interesting insights from it without having to read, hundreds and hundreds of pages.
Absolutely. We're taking a bird's eye view, if you will, of the AI landscape.
Mm-hmm.
So from the basic research and development to how it's impacting things like the economy, healthcare, even the laws that are being written around it.
Right, yeah. Okay, so let's start off unpacking this by looking at the seed of research and development in AI. One thing that really popped out to me was this trend of industry taking a bigger role in creating these new AI models.
Yeah.
In 2024, almost 90% of what the report considers notable AI models came from industry.
Wow.
Up from about 60% just the year before. So that's a pretty big jump.
That's a huge shift.
Yeah. And it's worth thinking about why that might be. Maybe industry just has more resources, more data, more computing power to throw at these big, complicated AI models.
Mm-hmm.
And this is interesting, academia is still the leader when it comes to that really highly cited research, like the foundational stuff, the really groundbreaking papers.
Mm-hmm.
And for the last 3 years, universities and research institutions have produced the majority of the top 100 most influential publications in AI. So, they're still driving a lot of the core advancements.
Right. And some of those big publications in 2023 were from some really big names, right? OpenAI with their GPT-4 technical report, and Meta with their Llama 2 tech report.
Oh, yeah.
Google's Pollen as well. These are like the blueprints in a way for so much of what's happening in AI right now.
These reports are like the nuts and bolts, right? They explain how the models were built, what they can do, how they were trained. It's all there for everyone in the field to see and build upon. Okay, let's talk about AI patents. This is an area where we see insane growth, right?
Mm-hmm.
In 2010, there were just under 4,000 AI patents filed. By 2023, that number had exploded to over 122,000.
That's wow.
And get this, a 30% increase in the last year alone.
It's incredible, that kind of explosion in patenting that really points to how much innovation and competition there is in the AI world.
Yeah.
Companies are pouring money into developing new AI, and they're rushing to protect their inventions, through patents. It makes you wonder what are they seeing? What kind of future value do they see in these specific AI innovations?
Yeah, it's interesting. And if you look at the geographical breakdown of those patents, China is way ahead. They accounted for almost 70% of all AI patents granted in 2023. But if you look at it per capita, then it's South Korea and Luxembourg that are the leaders.
That's interesting. Yeah, I mean, the per capita thing, that suggests a really focused national effort on AI in those countries. They've got specific policies and investments aimed at driving AI development, right? So it raises a question about how national priorities shape, the whole landscape of AI innovation.
Okay. Now let's talk about the hardware, the stuff that makes all this AI possible.
The engine.
Yeah. It's getting faster, it's getting cheaper, it's getting more energy efficient, and all of this is happening so fast. The performance of machine learning hardware is increasing over 20% every year.
It's mind-boggling.
I know.
Yeah.
That means it's basically doubling every 2 years or so.
Uh-huh.
And the costs are going down too.
Yeah.
Computing costs are dropping by about 30% annually.
It's amazing how quickly things are changing.
And energy efficiency is improving by 40% each year as well.
That's huge. Those hardware advances, those are the foundation for everything we're seeing in AI. Being able to process tons of data faster and with less energy, that's what allows us to create these incredibly sophisticated AI models.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the report gives a great example. The NVIDIA B100 from 2024, 33 times more energy efficient than the NVIDIA P100, which came out just 8 years earlier.
Wow.
Right? That's a huge leap forward. It has massive implications for the environmental impact of AI and for how much we can scale up these models in the future.
Okay, now this is where things get really interesting. The report talks about these new ways that AI models reason, called test time compute. It's kind of like showing your work in a math problem.
Uh-huh.
The AI iteratively processes its own output to try to get to a better answer.
Interesting.
Yeah, OpenAI's O1 and O3 models are examples of this, and they achieved a crazy high score of 74.4% on this very challenging math exam, compared to just 9.3% for GPT-4o, which is the standard GPT-4 model.
Wow, so that test time compute, that really seems to boost the AI's reasoning abilities. But I wonder, is there a trade-off?
Right.
Is it slower, maybe, or more expensive to run?
Yeah, exactly. That's the interesting part. O1, while it's much better at reasoning for this particular really tough task, it's way more expensive to run and much slower than something like GPT-4o. So it highlights his ongoing research into how to balance reasoning power with cost and speed for different AI applications.
That makes sense. It's a balancing act.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And as AI models are becoming more capable, they're starting to max out these traditional benchmarks that we've used to test them. You know, the tests are becoming too easy. So researchers are having to create these harder and harder benchmarks to really push the limits of what AI can do.
That makes sense. We need to keep raising the bar.
Right, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And some of these new benchmarks include things like humanity's last exam, where even the best AI is scoring less than 9%. And then frontier math, where AI can only solve about 2% of the problems.
Mm-hmm.
And Big Code Bench, which has an AI success rate around 35%.
Those are tough challenges, really pushing the boundaries of what AI can do today. It's like we're constantly trying to figure out what are the limits?
Right.
Where do things break down? Yeah.
It's fascinating.
Now, there's this trend that is a little concerning, and the report talks about this as the shrinking data commons. It's basically that there's less and less data available for training AI models. They found that between 2023 and 2024, a lot more restrictions were placed on how websites allowed their data to be used for training AI.
Okay, so less data to work with.
Yeah.
That's a problem.
Yeah, in one commonly used data set, the proportion of restricted text jumped from, a small percentage to a much larger one. What do you think the implications of that are?
Well, a few things come to mind. I mean, if you're training AI on a smaller, more limited set of data, you're going to run into problems with diversity, right? The models might not be as robust, and they could even end up being more biased. Mm-hmm. And it could be harder to align those models with human values if they haven't been exposed to a wide range of information.
Right.
And ultimately, it could even limit how much we can scale up AI development in the future if we just don't have enough data to train these increasingly large models. Right. Okay, let's switch gears to something a bit more positive. The report highlights this incredible growth of publicly available protein databases and the emergence of all these powerful AI models specifically designed for medicine.
This is an area I'm really excited about.
Yeah. Databases like UniProt, PDB, and AlphaFold have seen huge increases in size since 2021. And in 2024, we saw the development of some really interesting medical AI models: MedGemini, EchoClip, Vision FM, Chex Agent.
These are game changers. I mean, these bigger protein databases and these new medical AI models, they have the potential to completely transform how we diagnose diseases, how we discover new drugs, even how we personalize treatment.
Yeah, and the cost of using these advanced AI models is actually coming down quite a bit, which makes them more accessible to more people.
Right.
The report says that the cost to query a model with similar capabilities to GPT 3.5 dropped by over 280 times between late 2022 and late 2024. That's a massive drop in price in a short period of time.
That's incredible. That kind of price drop is huge. It means these powerful AI tools are becoming more and more accessible to individuals, to startups, to researchers, to organizations of all sizes.
Mm-hmm.
It's democratizing access to AI, which is so important for driving innovation.
Right. There's also been this shift in where AI research is being shared. You're seeing fewer papers in traditional academic journals and conferences, and more research is being posted on these open access repositories like Archive.
Makes sense. Researchers want to get their findings out there quickly.
Yeah.
And platforms like Archive, they allow for that. It's
Yes.
immediate. And it's great for the pace of innovation in AI.
Mm-hmm. And Google and Tsinghua University tied for having the most top 100 cited publications in 2023, with Carnegie Mellon University leading the U.S. academic institutions.
Those are some heavy hitters in the AI world.
Yeah.
Their prominence in those highly cited publications, that shows just how much they're contributing to pushing the boundaries of AI research.
Okay, now here's a big question, and the report touches on this. Are we going to run out of data to train AI models in the future? There's this idea of using synthetic data that's generated by AI itself, as a possible solution.
Oh, interesting. Training AI with data created by AI.
Yeah.
Kind of like a snake eating its own tail.
Right. But there are challenges, right? Like, how do we ensure that the synthetic data actually reflects the real world?
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes it can be detected as being fake. So it's not a perfect solution, but it's promising, especially when you combine it with the real data.
Yeah, it's a fascinating idea, and it could be really valuable in areas like healthcare, where privacy is such a big concern.
Yeah.
You know, if you could use synthetic data to augment real patient data, you could potentially train these really powerful AI models while still protecting people's sensitive health information.
Right. Okay, let's talk about responsible AI now. The report points to this, kind of a worrying trend. The number of AI-related incidents is actually increasing.
Oh, that's not good.
Yeah, there were 233 reported incidents in 2024.
Wow.
Up over 56% from the year before. And this is happening even though these standardized ways of evaluating how responsible AI systems are, they're not being widely used yet.
That's concerning. It seems like we're seeing more and more instances of AI behaving in ways that are unexpected or maybe even harmful.
Yeah.
You know, things like biased outputs, privacy violations, the spread of misinformation using AI. And it sounds like many of the companies building these powerful AI models, they're not consistently using the tools that are out there to assess the safety and ethical implications of their creations.
Yeah.
Right.
There are some encouraging developments, though. New tools are being developed to help us assess AI in a more responsible way. Things like Helm Safety, AirBench, and fact tests. These focus on things like accuracy and safety.
It's good to see those tools emerging, but it sounds like there's still a gap between recognizing the need for responsible AI and actually putting these evaluation methods into practice. It's like companies know it's important, but they're not quite there yet in terms of fully integrating those practices into how they develop AI. And that's where the actions of governments and international organizations become even more important.
Absolutely. 2024 saw a lot of global collaboration on AI governance.
Yeah.
You know, the OECD, EU, UN, the African Union, they all put forward frameworks for promoting transparency, trustworthiness, and other key principles of responsible AI.
So there's a growing global consensus at the policy level that we need some kind of oversight for AI. It's really interesting to see how this is playing out. On one hand, you have the industry, where the adoption of responsible AI benchmarks is still kind of slow. And on the other hand, you have this growing momentum behind AI governance on a global scale. It's a bit of a tension. And it's going to be really interesting to see how that tension shapes the future of AI, how it's developed, how it's deployed.
Yeah. Despite their importance for comparing different AI models, especially in terms of safety and responsibility, these benchmarks are still not being widely adopted. The report does point out, however, that there has been progress in creating better benchmarks for evaluating the factual accuracy of AI outputs.
Okay. That's crucial, right?
Yeah.
As these models are getting better and better at generating text that sounds like it was written by a human, we need to make sure the information they're giving us is actually accurate and reliable.
Right.
It's not enough to just look at how fluent the AI is. We need to be able to measure its ability to tell the truth, to stick to the facts. And these new benchmarks like FCTS and Simple QA, those are helping us to do that.
Okay. When it comes to transparency, how open researchers are about the work behind these foundational AI models, things are actually getting better. The average score on what they call the Transparency Index rose from 37% to 58%. That's progress. But the report also points out that there are still big gaps, especially when it comes to understanding what data was used to train these models and issues around copyright.
So more transparency is always good, but it sounds like we still have a ways to go. If we really want to build trust in AI and ensure responsible innovation, we need to have a clear understanding of the data that's being used to train these models, and we need to sort out the intellectual property rights.
Right. And here's something else to consider. Even AI models that are specifically designed to be unbiased, models like GPT-4 and Claude 3 Sonnet, they can still exhibit these implicit biases. You might see these biases popping up in how the model associates certain characteristics with race, gender, or leadership roles.
It's tough. It really underscores how challenging it is to address bias in AI.
Yeah.
Even when developers are actively trying to build unbiased systems, you can still end up with these subtle biases that creep in, maybe from the data the model was trained on, or even just from the way language itself works. It's a constant battle, We need to keep doing research and paying close attention to try to identify and mitigate these hidden biases as much as possible.
2024 saw a lot of AI-related misinformation spreading globally around elections, including the U.S. presidential election, across different online platforms and in different countries. It's difficult to measure the exact impact this had, but the report does mention one particular campaign called Spamiflage that was linked to China. This campaign used AI-generated images to spread misinformation in the U.S. election.
It's a troubling trend.
Yeah.
Right. This ability to generate really realistic fake content at scale, that's a powerful tool. And in the wrong hands, it has the potential to really damage democratic processes and undermine trust in information. Even if we can't always measure the direct impact of a specific campaign, the potential for manipulation is there, and it's serious.
There's been this surge of interest in AI security and safety in academia, with a big increase in the number of research papers being submitted to AI conferences on these topics.
That's a good sign. It means the research community is recognizing the potential risks associated with these increasingly powerful AI systems, and they're actively trying to understand those risks and figure out ways to address them.
Yeah. In terms of global policy, there were some really important developments in 2024. The EU AI Act, the African Union's AI strategy, Canada made a big investment in AI, and Saudi Arabia launched this really ambitious Project Transcendence, which is a $100 billion AI initiative with Alphabet. We're also seeing different countries enacting regulations related to how AI can be used in political advertising and data governance.
It's clear that governments around the world are taking AI seriously.
Yeah.
They're recognizing that AI has this incredible transformative power, and they're trying to figure out the best ways to govern its development and use. And it's interesting to see the different approaches countries are taking. The EU is really focused on regulation. Canada is investing heavily in research. Saudi Arabia is making this big strategic technology push. It reflects the different values and priorities that nations are bringing to the table.
It's really interesting to see how those priorities play out. And even within the U.S., there's this growing support for AI regulation at the local level. Almost 74% of local policymakers said they believe AI should be regulated in 2023.
That's a pretty strong signal that there's a broad consensus emerging across different levels of government in the U.S. that we need some kind of framework for overseeing AI. And it's not just one political party or ideology driving this. It's across the board. It suggests a growing awareness of the potential societal impacts of AI, regardless of political affiliation.
Okay. Privacy and data governance continue to be major issues. The report talks about how difficult it is to define exactly what privacy means in the context of AI, and there are problems with how dataset licenses are categorized. And of course, we've already talked about how restrictions on access to data for AI training are increasing.
These are tough issues. Figuring out how to navigate data in the age of AI, it's complex. We need to establish clear definitions of privacy. We need to ensure that data licensing is accurate and transparent. And we need to address the implications of having limited access to data. Those are all fundamental challenges that we need to solve if we want to foster responsible AI development.
The report looked at how often AI models refuse to answer certain prompts, their refusal rates. They used tools like AI Bench to measure this, and what they found was that there's a lot of variability between models. Some models are much more likely to refuse certain requests than others. And these patterns of refusal, they don't always align with what global regulations might expect.
That's interesting. So it's not just about what the AI says, it's also about what it chooses not to say.
Right.
And it sounds like we still have work to do in terms of aligning how AI behaves with ethical and legal standards. We need to go beyond simple content filtering. We need to develop more sophisticated training methods that can ensure AI models are consistently adhering to a well-defined set of responsible AI principles.
Right. Finally, the report touches on research into vulnerabilities in these more complex agentic AI systems. Things like infectious jailbreaks in systems where multiple AI agents are working together. If one agent is compromised, it could potentially bring down the whole system. And there are also these ongoing ethical concerns about AI-driven misinformation, like the very existence of AI-generated deepfakes that could be used as a tactic to dismiss real evidence. Even when it's legitimate, people might say, oh, that's just a deepfake.
Yeah, those are some serious challenges. As AI becomes more integrated into our lives, we need to be thinking about those potential vulnerabilities, the possibility of widespread failures in these interconnected AI systems, and the erosion of trust in information because of things like deepfakes. Those are things we need to be paying close attention to, and we need to be proactive in developing strategies to mitigate those risks.
Okay, let's move on to AI in science and medicine. 2024 was a huge year for AI in these fields. We actually saw 2 Nobel Prizes being awarded to research involving AI, one in chemistry for the development of AlphaFold, which has revolutionized protein folding prediction, and another in physics for foundational work on neural networks.
It's a watershed moment.
Yeah.
To have AI research recognized with 2 Nobel Prizes, that really underscores just how profoundly AI is impacting scientific discovery.
We're also seeing AI being used to create agents that can actually perform biological tasks. The aviary framework is an example of that. There have been advancements in predicting how proteins interact with drugs with AlphaFold 3, and there are even virtual AI labs being used for biomedical research.
It's incredible. AI is becoming an active partner in scientific exploration. It's not just analyzing data, it's helping to design and discover new therapies, new diagnostic tools. It's really exciting.
The report highlights how the influence of AI on protein science research is growing really fast.
Oh, yeah.
The number of AI-related publications in this area is exploding, particularly when it comes to predicting the structure of proteins, understanding how they function, and figuring out how they interact with drugs.
It's transforming the field.
Yeah, and the FDA has been approving a lot more medical devices that incorporate AI as well.
So we're seeing real-world applications of AI in healthcare.
Yeah.
From accelerating fundamental research to developing new treatments and diagnostic tools, AI is making a real difference.
But there are challenges too, right?
Of course. Nothing's perfect.
Right. One issue is the data that's used to train AI for medical imaging. The report mentions that, at least in the U.S., the training data often comes from specific geographic locations, and there's a shortage of publicly available 3D data sets. So you might end up with AI models that work well for some populations, but not others.
Yeah, that's a problem. If the data isn't diverse and representative, you can end up with AI models that are biased or that just don't generalize well to different patient populations. And the lack of 3D data, that also limits the development of AI for more complex medical imaging tasks.
Okay, now back to synthetic data. We've talked about this a little bit already. But in medicine, it has the potential to be really powerful.
Definitely.
Researchers are finding that it can help them understand the social factors that influence health, make better predictions about clinical risks while protecting patient privacy, and even assist in discovering new drug compounds. And they're developing models like XReal specifically to generate realistic synthetic medical images.
It's promising stuff. Being able to create realistic but anonymized medical data, that could be a game changer for training more robust and generalizable AI models while still safeguarding patient privacy.
Right.
And I'm particularly interested in how synthetic data can be used to help us understand those social determinants of health. Things like poverty, access to healthcare, education levels, all of those factors that play a role in people's health outcomes. If we can use synthetic data to get a better handle on those factors, we can start to develop more effective interventions to address health inequities.
We're seeing these large vision language models, the LVLMs, they're starting to be used in medicine as well. Models like Chexigent, Merlin, and MedGemini.
Powerful tools.
Yeah, they're being used to improve diagnoses and to automate the creation of medical reports. And Natural language processing is also being applied in healthcare, largely focused on increasing medical knowledge and helping doctors make diagnoses.
The combination of vision and language processing, that's a really significant step forward for medical AI. These LVLMs, they can analyze both images and text, which means they can provide a much more comprehensive assessment. And the automation of things like medical report generation, that can really streamline clinical workflows and free up doctors and nurses to spend more time focusing on patient care.
Okay, here's an interesting finding from the report. When doctors were given access to AI assistants, like GPT-4, to help them make complex clinical decisions in trials, they tended to make better decisions. However, it often took them a bit longer to reach those decisions.
That's fascinating. So it's not necessarily about speeding things up. It's about improving the quality of decision-making.
Right.
Maybe the AI is prompting the doctors to consider more factors, to think more deeply about each case. And that extra thought, that extra analysis, even if it takes a bit more time, could ultimately lead to better outcomes for patients.
Some healthcare systems, like Kaiser Permanente and Intermountain Health, they're starting to adopt this ambient AI scribe technology.
What is that exactly?
So it's basically AI that listens in on clinical visits and automatically documents what's being said.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, so it can reduce the administrative burden on doctors and nurses. They don't have to spend as much time writing notes.
That could be huge for addressing burnout among healthcare professionals.
Yeah.
You know, if you can free up their time so they can focus more on direct patient care, that's a win for everyone.
Okay, and then just some examples of real-world AI being used in medicine. Stanford Healthcare has this AI system for screening for peripheral artery disease. And AI is being used to extract social determinants of health from electronic health records, which, as we've talked about, can be really valuable for improving health equity.
So AI is making a real impact, not just in research, but in actual clinical practice. And it's being used to address some of the most pressing challenges in healthcare, from early disease detection to tackling health disparities.
We're seeing these foundational AI models starting to emerge that are specifically designed for medicine, ranging from these general-purpose ones like MedGemini to models that are designed for more specific tasks. And AI is also making big strides in other scientific fields. Climate science with the orbit model, weather forecasting with GenCast, even quantum computing with models like AlphaQuibit and Willow.
It's amazing to see how AI is being applied to such a wide range of scientific problems. And it's really exciting to think about the potential for AI to help us solve some of the world's biggest challenges.
Okay, let's talk about AI in education. The report shows a slight increase in access to and enrollment in computer science courses in U.S. high schools.
That's good news.
Yeah, it's encouraging.
We need more kids learning about computer science, especially with AI becoming so prevalent.
But there are still significant disparities in access based on things like race, ethnicity, school size, location, income, gender, disability. So there's still a lot of work to do in making sure everyone has equal opportunities to learn about computer science.
It's not enough to just increase access. We need to make sure that access is equitable.
Right.
Every student, regardless of their background or circumstances, should have the opportunity to develop those foundational computational skills. That's essential for navigating the future.
One interesting trend. The number of master's degrees awarded in AI in the U.S. almost doubled between 2022 and 2023. It's likely that it'll take longer for the numbers at the bachelor's and PhD level to catch up, but this jump at the master's level suggests that there's this growing demand for specialized AI education.
It makes sense. As AI becomes more integrated into different industries, companies are going to be looking for people with advanced AI skills. And a master's degree is often seen as the entry point for those more specialized roles. The report emphasizes the need to provide educators with more training and resources to develop their AI literacy. That's key. We can't expect teachers to effectively integrate AI into their teaching if they don't feel comfortable and confident with the technology themselves. We need to give them the support and training they need to understand how AI works, how to use it in the classroom, and what the ethical implications are.
There are some AI curriculum frameworks being developed to provide guidance for AI education at different learning stages, like the 5 Big Ideas in AI from the AI for K-12 initiative and UNESCO's competency frameworks.
Those are valuable resources. They provide a structured approach to teaching AI, outlining those key concepts and skills that students should be learning at different levels.
And the report also points out that there's a lot of variation across OECD countries in the number of people graduating with degrees in ICT fields, including computer science and AI.
That's interesting. It suggests different countries have different priorities and are investing differently in those fields.
Yeah.
And it highlights the importance of thinking about these issues at a national level. How do we ensure that we're developing a strong pipeline of talent in these critical areas?
Right. Finally, the report stresses that as AI becomes more prevalent, we need to be really intentional about creating an equitable educational environment.
That's so important.
We have to think carefully about how we teach AI,
Okay.
how we make sure it's fair, how we promote ethical awareness, and how we ensure that all students have equal opportunities to learn and benefit from this technology.
We can't just assume AI is going to be a force for good. We need to actively shape its development and use to create a more equitable and just future.
Okay. Well, we have certainly taken a deep dive into this AI index report for 2025. We've pulled out what we think are some of the most interesting and important points and hopefully saved you a lot of time reading.
It's been a fascinating conversation.
Yeah.
It's clear that AI is evolving rapidly, and it's presenting us with both incredible opportunities and some serious challenges.
So here's a final thought for you, the listener. Given how quickly things are changing and how deeply AI is becoming woven into our lives, which area that we've talked about today do you think is going to have the most profound impact on society in the next 5 years? Is it the future of AI research? Is it the complexities of responsible AI? Is it the breakthroughs in AI for science and medicine? Or maybe it's the challenges of AI education. And what questions does that raise for you about your own understanding of AI and how you engage with this technology? We encourage you to check out the full AI Index report and keep thinking critically about these important trends.
It's an exciting and challenging time to be alive.
Yeah. And it's going to be fascinating to see how things unfold.
Absolutely.
Well, thanks for joining us for this deep dive.
It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, until next time.
See ya.